And okay, we are live. Hello, everybody who's here. I can't tell if anybody's here yet, but I'm Annie. And this actually, I realized last week that I was saying Michael Dillon in my head because he had two first names. And Matt, I also call you Matt Mike, but you probably also just go by Matt. Is that is that the case?
Yeah, but a lot of people do call me Matt Mike or Mike is my last name. It's super
hmm
common. But that's
Yeah,
why in my profile I just put Matt Mike. It used to be Matthew Mike's my full name,
yeah,
but Matt Mike just kind of rings, it's a little different.
yeah. Okay. Well, I'm here with Matt Mike. For anybody who's just randomly seeing this, we are just chatting about our stories, how we got into data. We're both pretty new to the data analytics field, and so just figured we'd come and like get to know each other, and then just put that on a live stream so you guys can all see it. And also, I think that a lot of you probably this is your first time seeing Matt's face if you've been a follower of his for a while. So thanks for coming on. I know it's kind of nerve-wracking to be live and kind of very vulnerable to put your face out for your followers for the first time and stuff. So thanks for doing that and being here. So let's just let's just start. I'm going to spotlight some people coming in. But can you just start and tell me like what tell me your history. I literally don't know like any of your history. Like what did you do before you were a data analyst?
Yeah, for sure. I've kind of done a few different things. Like I went to college for English. I was an English lit major. I minored in Japanese.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. I went to Japan for a summer afterwards. Um, but when I got back, so I went into education, which I don't think a lot of people know. I'm like a transitioned teacher because
Hmm.
I didn't go straight from teaching to data. So I
Okay.
started as a special education teacher. I was making 28,000 a year, if you can
Oh
believe it.
gosh.
Looking back, I can't
Criminal.
believe I accepted less than 30,000. Like it's totally
Yeah.
criminal, awful. But I was so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed that I was like, "Wow, 28 sounds like a lot." It's an annual salary.
Yeah.
Totally taken advantage of. But I did that for a couple years, and then I moved into education administration. So I worked for a charter school here in Arizona, and I became the dean of students for the middle school program, which sounds probably pretty crazy. Deans in the charter school system operate a little bit differently than like a dean at a college, which is basically like principal or vice principal. It's a little bit lower down the totem hole in my job. Um, and even at the highest I was getting paid as a dean was like 42K, which isn't a
Wow.
lot for the amount of work that you do and the angry
Yeah.
parents you deal with. So I wanted to just make more money at that point. I was burned out, like most teachers end up getting. I went into business to business sales, took a big like pay increase, and was thinking I'm gonna make a lot of money. I'm gonna kill it at sales. Quickly found that I hated sales. Like I've never hated a job more in my life. Um, and it was like just constant cold calling. It was just either in the office calling 80 strangers in a day or driving around town walking into random businesses, and just the rejection is insane. And I'm just like I can't handle those kind of volumes of rejection selling something I don't care about at all, which
Yeah.
I didn't see. Looking back, the program I feel like was like a scam. I worked for Staples, so it wasn't, but it was just like what we were charging felt so absurd for like basically nothing.
hmm
And so I hated sales. I ended up just quitting with no backup plan. And I was just doing like side hustle work, like putting together IKEA furniture for people and like doing small moves out of my truck. Um, and I found a job doing like business operations, which really I was like a billing and collection associate. Took a like a 20% pay decrease doing that. I was like back to like my like dean salary with that, but I just needed something that was like stable. That was an office
hmm
job, corporate job. And honestly, for a while, like it was exactly what I needed. It was great, like through most of the pandemic too. And then I got promoted to being a supervisor, and then that was okay, but I got pretty burned out and just knew that like this is not where I wanted to stay. But there's an element of analytics with the job, especially in the supervisor role.
Yeah.
Um, I got really good at Excel working in that job, and so I started writing on Medium recently, and I published like an in-depth story about like my journey in 2022 about transitioning into data. But it started off like I just wanted to get better at Excel. I knew I was
Mm.
like pretty burned out in my job, didn't know if I wanted to stick around, but I wanted to add value. So I took some courses like on Go skills, which I had no idea where to look initially, like to
Yeah.
find courses. Um, all I knew was like the Microsoft official like certified exam, which is really expensive and really difficult. I ended up finding Go skills. I did a few Excel courses there. Found like Tableau, discovered business analytics, and I just realized like,
Mm.
wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And so kind of like summing it up a little bit, I applied for a business analyst position at my last company, didn't get it, started paternity leave, and around that time, like I was confident, like I don't want to stay here. I want to get into analytics. No idea how. Around the time, actually, I discovered you and I discovered Ian
Oh,
Klossowitz.
that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, so it's kind of surreal talking to you now because you're like one of the originals that like inspired me, and
Wow.
I'll get to it later. But a lot of what I ended up doing, I modeled after like what you were doing. Like it
Oh
inspired a
my
lot of it.
gosh.
But like shout out to Ian's book, How to Become a Data Analyst. I bought that. I found him. So I found him on like he commented on like a Justin Welsh post about
Mm.
how he just launched his book. I was like, oh, data analytics. I'm interested in that. I went on, I
Yeah.
just bought the book like right then and there, had no idea who he was. And it was exactly what I needed. And so I took some courses or I did a course in SQL, I did a course in Power BI. And when it came to the portfolio stuff, that's when I started digging more into like your content and the stuff that you were doing. I would look at your website. I looked at your GitHub. I looked at your Tableau public. It's like, okay, like what's this? What's this girl doing? Like she really seems like she's got it together, you know. And then I wanted to make a portfolio, and I just put together a portfolio myself and started applying to jobs like crazy. So I had the benefit of being in paternity leave during this time. It was a 5 week long period, but like 2 weeks in,
Mm.
I just hit like full throttle. And so I guess you could say like I started trying to get into analytics like in July, but it was
Wow.
kind of like August, and I got my first job in September. So
Mm.
I know like
Wow.
Chris French did it pretty quickly, and my
Yeah.
story is kind of similar in that way. But I also like I had the benefit of like basically not having a job, and my wife
Mhm.
and my wife knew I was pretty stressed out. Like I was working crazy hours at not crazy pay, and just this company was falling apart. Um, and so I just like hit full throttle, and I was just spending like 8 hours a day trying to transition, and my wife was fully behind it. I still spent plenty of time with my daughter, but I just treated it like I had a job. Like I had friends who got like a week of paternity leave, and I was like, okay, you know what? Like I have 5 weeks technically, but I'm going to treat it like I kind of have a job.
Yeah.
Um, and it worked out. And so I accepted a position right as my paternity leave was ending. And so I started that job mid September. So kind of a long story, but I think because I've gone through so many twists and turns, I just felt like it was important to mention all the little steps. And I kind of like my
Yeah.
story too.
Yeah, I mean, I like it because I'm a part of it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like, I mean, you probably have felt this at some point too. It feels like you create this stuff. It feels like you're just screaming into a void. And then you get all these messages from a day from people being like, hey, can you guide me? And it's like, did you read any of the stuff that I put out? And so hearing that you did read the stuff that I was putting out and like I really put a lot of work into, like, just makes me so happy to hear. I just cannot
Yeah.
emphasize enough. And I did not, for all you guys listening, I really did not know this ahead of time. He did not tell me. This is the first time I'm hearing it. I don't know if you could tell
I
from
wanted
my
to
face.
surprise everyone and you. I mean, I think that I've like mentioned to you in a DM not too long ago that like I knew of you and stuff, but you were really like a part of my story, you know, and I never messaged you once while I was like looking for a job. It was just like from afar, like I was
Hmm.
like a true follower and like looking at what you were doing, reading your posts and like really learning and using you as an example, which I
Wow.
think is cool to be talking to you now after all that, you know?
Yeah, that is very cool. When you were, I'm just gonna take a long. I'm gonna tell my boyfriend. Okay, I don't always tell my boyfriend everything I do on the internet because he thinks the LinkedIn thing, the social media thing is silly. But I'm definitely gonna tell him that story, just so you know.
Yeah, definitely.
He's gonna get that story. I was thinking when you were talking about your background, I wonder. I've done a lot of weird things. Like I talk mostly about how I was an occupational therapist, I was a nanny, but like I delivered pizza, I was a hostess and a waitress, like I've done all kinds of weird things. Um, but I feel like that flexibility and like learning the new things and really jumping in helped me when I was learning data analytics and now that I am an analyst, because I kind of have to, especially since I'm a consultant, I have to jump into a new project and be able to just jump feet first or head first or whatever onto new things. And so, do you feel like that kind of translation of like the jumping around, even though it doesn't look great on a resume, that jumping around really helped you?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think because of my background, I've, like, developed a lot of pretty unique skills that have kind of, like, culminated into, like, a great kind of package for, like, a data analyst. So, like, teaching and, you know, there's a lot of transitioning teachers going into data,
Hmm.
probably so I can't actually see the chat, so I don't know who's here. I think it's because I didn't create an account for StreamYard.
Well, let us know if you are a transitioning teacher in the chat. It's a 5-second delay, but when it comes up, I'll spotlight them. If you can see, if you can
Yeah,
process that while you're talking, it is hard to process.
yeah.
But yeah, it is a big demographic.
Yeah, so I was a teacher, which I think teachers are really excellent communicators and storytellers. Um, when I was a dean, I had to deal with a lot of pressure. Sales, you just like kind of get better at like talking to people because it's kind of all you do. But especially when I was doing business operations, that that did have like an analytical aspect, and I mean, I was in Excel like all day, every day, and the expectations for how much Excel you needed to know are quite low, but I was always really curious about how to get better at it. And by the time I left, I was like known as one of the like Excel guys. Like, oh, if you have an Excel question, go to Matt. That's because I was like taking courses and I was learning and I was like using a lot of advanced Excel in ways that I didn't need to for the role, but I knew like kind of set me apart by doing it, you know?
Yeah. So I'm curious about since you had that kind of like a little bit of analytics experience when you went to go to interview and like make your resume and everything. I think I did read your resume in the guide that we were in. For anybody who doesn't know, which you probably have heard because we've all posted about it, but there's like, I don't, what, like 11 of us that have our resumes together, de-identify the guide, and we kind of talked about like what made us put what into the guide. And so I did read everyone. I'm sure I read it, but did you manage to pull that out of your previous role, like the Excel skills and the analytics role skills, even though you weren't a data analyst?
Yeah, like I really highlighted that a lot. Because, you know, when you don't have professional experience as a data analyst, you kind of need to highlight anything that closely relates. And so the things I kind of highlighted were was the advanced use of Excel and specific functions like X lookups, pivot tables, macros, like conditional formatting. Like I did all these things, and I just kind of threw it in there. I would like bold it, I put it specifically in the skills section too. Um, and I even like kind of messed around with Power BI like in the role, you know, a little bit. So I
Hmm.
throw that stuff in there. I can't remember if it like made it into the last version of that resume. Um, and with the analytics side, like one thing I was doing as a supervisor is I was running with a lot of these really escalated accounts we had, and so I would like conduct a meeting with um, stakeholders on our side and their side, and I'd put together some kind of like really in-depth spreadsheet using a lot of pivot tables and making it look nice and presenting it to like this group of people on an online chat and talking through it and saying like this is where your account stands. So that is very analytical in its
Mm-hmm.
presentation, storytelling. So I really leaned into that stuff. So like that's experience I'm pretty grateful for. But I think for anyone, like you just have to find what you did that's even closely related to analytics, and just like really drive that home. Like anything you did that relates, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like even if you were like a teacher or something, like I remember in one interview I was saying how working with like clients' data, I imagine it's kind of like working with people's kids, and the interviewer was just like, "Yes."
Yeah, totally. I could see that.
Yeah. Yeah, so so you did the and also I wanted to say for everybody in the chat, we can only see that there's 3 people watching, which I know is not true. So feel free to say hello in the chat and let us know that you're here so we can get a pulse on like who's here and if you have questions. Because I'm really liking this interactive format because we do the live. Feel free to let us know. My chat is over here, so I keep pointing over there. So you in your interviews, did you also get to talk about that, like how you essentially were doing business intelligence in your last role? Like,
Mhm.
because in my coffee chat with I think Lauren, I talked about how if you start learning analytics, you don't want the first time you talk about analytics to be in an interview. The first time you get asked and talk about it, because you have to create that content in your head for the first time in an interview, which is such a high pressure environment. Whereas if you've like joined groups and you've talked on LinkedIn or messaged with people or whatever, you had a chance to talk about using SQL or drawing, pivot tables or drawing information out of pivot tables. You don't have to create the content; you can just say it in the interview. And so I'm curious, did you experience that with your role into the interviews?
Not probably not as much. So I did not do like a ton of networking before I got my job. And again, like it happened kind of quickly. The only like connection I made on LinkedIn prior to getting a job was actually Ian. So I did reach out to him, but I bought his book. I was like, "Hey man, I bought your book. It's awesome. It's just what I needed." He even has like that message still featured on his Gumroad page for the book. And
Yeah,
so I think because just I was so sincere and I was like, "Hey, I actually bought your product and like I love it." And I was just like really kind. I wasn't expecting it. I was literally just to like say, "Hey, you're awesome." And
yeah.
then, he kind of struck up a conversation. He kind of became sort of like a mentor through that process. And so I would run stuff by him like, oh, how can I like really showcase SQL on a portfolio? And I would ask him questions like,
Hmm.
but I wasn't doing coffee chats with people. And this is just me. I think everyone else like should. Um, but I wasn't doing that. So, but I did have a lot of, like screening calls with recruiters where I was kind of refining, explaining like how my experience related, as I just
Yeah.
did all the different screens. And some of
Hmm.
those ended up in interviews, some of them didn't, but it was all really helpful and just kind of getting used to talking about it. And then I just
Yeah.
like I iterated my resume so many times that I was just used to kind of like writing it out too, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone asked what's the name of the book, and do you remember what it's like? How to get a job as a data analyst or
Yeah,
something, right?
it's literally just how to get an analytics job or how to become a data analyst, I think. So
Okay.
it
Yeah,
accomplishes
that's
exactly what it says.
yeah, that's Ian K. And if you go to my YouTube channel, I actually did he was my first interview. We had a lot of technical interviews, technical problems. But he was my first interview. So some of these things that you would see in his book, we did talk about on our chat. So how many so did you do like a lot? I know that you said we all do a lot of recruiter phone screens. We all do a lot of
Mhm.
them. But did you do a lot of like technical interviews, panels, like that kind of stuff, behavioral interviews? What was your general interview process like for this job and like other jobs?
Yeah, so for this job, I didn't do any technical interviews. I did a bunch of
Wow.
screenings and then like a few like first round interviews. The place I ended up getting hired at, they like just had one interview. Like I talked to a recruiter and then I did the interview and
Hmm.
like I had it and it wasn't a technical one. Um, but I think the role that I have now it was just like a really unique situation. I come from billing and collections, and I my formal title right now is a collections financial analyst. Now I think what I do is like really could be accurately described as like a business analyst.
Yeah.
Um, but they were specifically looking for someone who had that background. And so this is something we talk about sometimes in our post or whatever when we're talking to people is like the domain knowledge, the business acumen. Because yeah, like technical skills will get you pretty far, not as far as you might be expecting for an entry level role though. A lot of times what they're looking for is how well do you know the business or just are you a critical thinker? What kind of person
Hmm.
are you? Because
Hmm.
there's a lot that can be taught when you're in the entry level stage. And so they were looking for someone who just knew the business. They said they even interviewed people who were like way more technically proficient than me, but I
Hmm.
had the domain knowledge. And
Yeah.
so I'm like siloed in the credit collections department of this big company as an analyst there. So I you know, am directly dealing with that kind of data for that department. So it just kind of
Yeah.
like was a uniquely suited role for me. But that's why I think it's good too to like look for roles outside just the title data analyst. I think too it's why like just you got to keep your options open because you might find that role that matches your background really well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I actually was coming out of healthcare and I hate our healthcare system. And people were like, oh, apply for healthcare analytics jobs. There's tons of them. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of this system. Like, I think it's broken. I'm someone with a chronic illness. I think our system is broken. I don't want to contribute to that. So I did apply to analytics companies. I did get interviews there. But I was really hoping actually not to end up at a healthcare focused company. Um, but it is really great advice. So you kind of spoiled the surprise about what job you ended up getting. So you got a job really quickly. So did you ever hit that like valley of despair of like I'm never going to be able to get a job in this? But I certainly did. I'm sure other people. Did you ever hit that?
um, I wouldn't say it was like this big, like, should I reconsider this? I think I was pretty confident it was going to work out eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's not true of like everything I do, but I think in this situation, I just so much like wanted to move into the field and away from what I was doing that I was like, it's just a matter of time. Like I'm going to keep
Mm-hmm.
going hard. Sometimes things like not being like an expert at SQL like kind of got to me because it's like, well, like no, I don't have professional experience doing SQL, but I've done
Yeah.
these things. You get that a
Yeah.
lot too. You're looking at someone who's like really good at it. So I would get moments where like my confidence was a little shook, but I didn't really have like in the valley like maybe I should go back to what I was doing or something else kind of moment. But it did happen like kind of fast. But again, it was like I saw it as like to really optimize my time. I want to find something before I go back to my job because like I have this opportunity where I'm like full time looking for a job, and once I
Mm-hmm.
go back to work, I'm going to be back to just like a part time job seeker, And so
Yeah.
I was going at it like really hard.
Yeah. So when you got your job, did you have to go back to your old job first, like for a couple weeks, like give it 2 weeks and
Mhm.
like go back, or did you get to just go right into it?
I did it 2 weeks. And so like I came back and I think I had formally like signed the offer, whatever, like the day I went back. So it was like on day 2 or 3 that like I told my boss that, I was putting in my 2 weeks and I was leaving. So there was like a 2 week transition period. And there's like 2 weeks are kind of a drag because like I was already gone for 5 weeks. So they had
Yeah.
already functioned without me.
Mhm.
And then like they knew I was gonna be gone in 2 weeks. So it was a really kind of weird place to be, like really kind of nebulous and didn't have like a ton to do. But I was also like, I didn't really like it there anymore, and I was really excited about the new role. So I was like, I can't wait to get out of here, you know?
Yeah. So tell us about the new role. I think I saw that you did do some commuting. So is it hybrid? What's up with that?
Yeah, so I'll say this, and this is probably gonna be a shocker to everyone. My role is fully in office. I almost feel like that's like sacrilegious to say in the data
Yeah.
field, but
Yeah.
it was a compromise I made. I'll say this, like I don't like going into the office every day. So my
Okay.
role, great role. I love what I do, the type of work I do, um, and like all the things. Like it was more pay, a lot less stress than I was dealing with. I love getting to work with the tools. I have a good boss. I don't really like the company culture. It's really kind of old school, a little
Mm,
rigid. Obviously, going into the office every day.
yeah.
I've been there about 5 months now, so I'm at that point where like I've recently actually started like looking for something new, because I feel like that's enough time to like kind of spread your wings. I think I remember in your conversation with Chris, you guys were talking a little bit about that. Um, but I took the role because like they met my salary expectations, and it did feel like this uniquely suited role that would have done really well as like my first analyst job because like I had the domain knowledge,
Yeah.
and that ended up being a good play because it was good for that reason. It's just not somewhere that like I, full transparency, that I want to stay like long term. I do want to
Yeah.
get a job that's fully remote and a company
Mhm.
that's like a little bit that they're just their values align with mine a little bit more. So like by no means am I like unhappy. It's not a bad job. Like, I really like what I do. It's
Yeah.
just not a company I'd prefer to stay at, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's physically need to do anything in person? So do you think that there's anything about your job that really does need to be done in person, or do you feel like you could just do it from home?
Yeah. Heck no. Like nothing I do needs to be in person. And this is where they're kind of rigid because I actually asked, like, could I be hybrid? And it was just
Mhm.
like, no, it's like, it's just not what our department does. And
Mm.
there's other departments that are hybrid. So it really is just kind of siloed. Like, what does each department want to do? There's other analysts in other departments that are hybrid. It's like literally just my department that they're like, no, everyone will be here every day. And the reasons they say is like the collaboration aspect is so much easier to just talk to each other in person. I don't
Mhm.
disagree with that, but most days I'm kind of left to my own devices. I mean, there's days
Yeah.
like I talk to my boss for like 5 minutes, and
Mhm.
then I'm just like on my own the rest of the day. And it's really just like me, her, and our director that like communicate. And then
Mhm.
whenever there's video calls, like with people outside of our office, we don't even do camera on. It's just like a part of the company culture is the camera is never on. So it's just like it kind of further validates like I could be doing this at home, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are those things where like it's just kind of like I mentioned, it's rigid, and
Mhm.
that like those, those aren't really good reasons for needing to be in the office. Because I could understand if maybe some of these other roles can benefit from it more, but I'm the only analyst in the department, and it's a new role for the company. So I don't think they quite understand that like it's not like totally necessary for me to be there, but they kind of have this standardized rule that like everyone's just going to be in the office.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what kind of things do you do at your job? Like I know that some people can and cannot talk about this, so only share what you can, but like what tools do you use? Like what's your kind of thing that you do most days?
Yeah. So it's a lot of Excel and Tableau is what I work in. So a lot of the day-to-day ad hoc analysis is in Excel. And they're kind of used to seeing everything in Excel too. One
Yeah.
of the reasons they hired me is they want to start transitioning a lot of their reporting onto Tableau. So they're
Mm.
looking for someone that knew Tableau, and I did. Um, So like sometimes I'm building out reports in Tableau, and I work with our data engineer to like create, the databases. And so, she's changing up the data warehousing to meet our
Mhm.
needs. And then I'm kind of this liaison between my stakeholders and the data engineers. So I play this like, middle ground. But I'm doing a lot of reporting that develops insights for the company, or at least for the department. Um,
Yeah.
so it's credit and collection. So it's just like a lot of things, like, where's our AR, how's our bad debt, like these different things. I'll get a request for report, and then sometimes I'm working with other departments or just other people to like kind of get the data together. Or if we already have the data readily available, then I'm just building out a dashboard or an Excel report. Or like I mentioned, I communicate with our engineer pretty often, and like we'll talk through like SQL code together, but I'm not actually doing SQL in my
Mhm.
role. A lot of big companies, they'll have engineers that create the data warehousing and then funnel it through a system like Snowflake
Yeah.
into a high level BI tool with clean data that's like ready to pull on a report for the analysts or for the rest of the department. And so that's the
Mhm.
side I'm on. I know a lot of smaller companies or startups, data analysts will do kind of like the whole scope. Like they're doing a
Yeah.
lot of the data cleaning and the like
Mhm.
visualization. My
Yep.
company is just so big that like they have it split up into kind of
Yeah.
equal parts. Yeah.
Yeah, I work with a lot of those smaller companies. They come to us, and then we analyze and visualize their data. And so there's for me, like I have to build the data model out, and it's usually not defined. And so sometimes I have to figure out like probably know this, but in Tableau you can let's see where my fingers are. You can have like a you can have like one table going to multiple tables, but you can't have multiple tables going to one table.
Hmm.
Sometimes like that, like you need that to happen. So you have to figure out like what's your fix for that? How can you get around that? If there are different arms of the data model and they don't join together. So I have to like really think about like the strategy of the data model, and I have to think about like which fields are we using, and are they actually appropriately, reflecting revenue, even though it says revenue, it might not reflect revenue. And like, I do have to do a lot of that, like middleman cleaning that you're talking about, and then bring it in, and then build it into a report. But one thing on that, are your reports usually like exploratory where they go in and it updates like, okay, every week I can check on this? Or are you kind of building more infographic, kind of like a PowerPoint style report where it's like, okay, here's the snapshot right now, and here's my take on it right on screen for you?
Yeah, it's both. So there's like a couple of like Tableau dashboards that I made that like the data refreshes, at a certain cadence regularly. And then there's sometimes I'm like building out a report like through like the main BI system, like with our data engineer, like, oh, this is what we need. Can we get this together? Like, this is where we're going to have to pull the data from to get it. And I'm not actually doing anything with it, but we're just working through like how it's going to be constructed. And then a lot of times too, I'm doing Excel reports that are kind of more of a snapshot view, but it's like a couple of different things. Like there's some that I do where like I'm pulling the data and I'm like doing something with it, or I have some like Excel dashboards or Excel reports where like if you just refresh the data with new data, like it all updates. Like you just refresh it. So it is a dashboard, but it's like in Excel,
Mm-hmm.
and you just
Mm-hmm.
have to refresh a couple things with new data. And so like there's a few reports that I've kind of designed and tried to make something that can like outlive me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, just use this template, just refresh the data, and you're good. You don't have to remake all these charts every single time. And so that's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's really like satisfying building systems. And I remember seeing like a joke that like once you get into the tech world, sometimes you'll like spend like a full day building a system for something that would like take
Mhm.
you 10 minutes a week.
Yeah, totally. Especially when I started, it was just like spending entire days, yeah, like making one report or something. But you build it with the mind that like this is something that's going to be like scalable or that can update. Like it's going to make the future a little bit easier. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you said you started your role in like September, right?
Hmm.
So October, November, December, January. So you've been there for about 4 months.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious. I feel like I definitely learned a lot in the span of time from starting my job to now, because I do work at a startup and you have to learn a lot at a startup. But I talked to some other people at bigger companies and they're like, yeah, for the first month, I didn't really do much. And, now I just kind of am doing like the same thing, but it's super basic. So have you gotten the opportunity to learn a lot or have you just been kind of coasting?
Yeah, I did. I learned a lot like initially, especially in Tableau. So to do some of the things that were being requested, like I really had to stretch my Tableau knowledge, and then like I want to make it good. I want to make it look fancy. I want to like throw in bells and whistles, and so I would learn a lot. And then even with Excel, and I'm still learning things too. I'd say it has gotten to a point where like I feel like now I'm kind of coasting. Like
Mm-hmm.
from a skills standpoint, I think the role is like plateaued a bit, and I don't foresee like it getting any more complicated. Like this
Mm-hmm.
is kind of what it's going to be, which in one sense is reassuring. Like it gives me a lot of confidence that like okay, like I can function in this role really well. Even when I came into the role, even though we're only using Excel and Tableau, they were like pretty impressed with how much I knew, which
Mm-hmm.
is like a good feeling. Like, you spend all the time in the job hunt, like trying to get really good at the technical skills. So when they're like impressed by some of your technical skills, like that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
But like my managers, they're not like techie people, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which sometimes is the case with stakeholders. Which is why as an analyst, like you need to be able to break things down simply. But yeah,
Yeah.
like I do think I've learned a lot in the role, and it's been really cool. But I am kind of like coasting now. Like
Yeah.
it's yeah, not, and I like that it's not stressful.
Yeah.
I come from a job that was incredibly stressful. Like stress was at an all-time high. Like right before I went on paternity leave, I was working a lot
Mhm.
of overtime, and now it's just kind of like I work what I need to work, and there's like zero stress at all. But I also get bored kind of easily.
Mhm.
I want to be doing new things, like learning new things, and learning new tools. Um, yeah, and I've already been like interviewing around at some places. I'm like no,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say too much, but like hopefully you'll see a job status update pretty soon here. But
Yeah.
like, I've been interviewing at some roles that are a lot more exciting, in my opinion, because there's just a lot more tools, more technical. I want to get a little bit more technical. You
Yeah.
know? Hmm.
Yeah, that is exciting. So talk us through, I know that I've seen sometimes people will say on LinkedIn, don't take a job that is going to be not paying you enough or not, not what you want in any number of these ways because, you should really hold out for that job. But I don't really agree with that. Um, and I think that you're a good example of someone who took like the job is good, well aligned with your background, but it was in office, which you weren't looking for. So can you just walk us through your thought process of like how this is a really good first step and then your career progression in the future, like how that was a forward facing move?
Hmm. Yeah, so kind of like you mentioned, I was willing to be somewhat flexible in the first job that I took. I know that obviously it's pretty hard to break into an entry level data analytics role. We hear that every day in our space, and that's something you and I are always trying to help people with. So I was kind of willing to make some compromises to break into it. And I have a good friend who's a data engineer at Blizzard in like human life. Like he's not on LinkedIn at all, but he's just like it's cool because we're like in the data field, and he kind of had some of the same. thoughts. Like the first data job he got was not glamorous, but it got him into this space. And after enough time, like he ended up working at Blizzard, which is like pretty sweet now. And so for myself, like I was open to, because I was looking at both. I was looking at fully remote jobs. I was looking at hybrid jobs. I was looking at like in office jobs. And so for me, the compromise I was willing to make was that if they could pay me what I want to get paid, I'll go in the office because like
Mhm.
A, it's going to be my break into the data world, and B, like the pay is going to be good. And they
Mhm.
actually exceeded what I was hoping to be paid. I don't want to disclose what that is, like just
That's okay.
because I'm still working there.
Yep.
Um, but it was like above what I was expecting. So it's like, okay,
Mhm.
like that's a pretty good sign. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm willing to make that trade-off. Like solid pay. I have to go in the
Mhm.
office. That sucks. But I'm also now like officially in that analytics space. And that I think that's
Yeah.
gonna my mindset at, from the beginning was like, and that's gonna prepare me for future role. Like now I actually am gaining real world experience. Because when you're first starting off, it's always like, yeah, I haven't done this professionally, but these are the projects I've worked on, so on and so forth. Now it's like, yeah, I've actually built out Tableau dashboards that hundreds of people are looking at and like stuff like that. That's a very different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting too, now that like I think I've been in my job for like 6 months or something. I am not looking for a job right now. I love my job, but if I were to be, um once you kind of get into it, you realize, like you said, that the critical thinking skills are so important. And so, kind of like that's why we create the content that we do, because we can see, like, kind of retroactively looking back, okay, you don't necessarily need to be a SQL wizard, but
Mm,
they do want to see the critical thinking skills. And being able to say, okay, I have used Tableau and I have done this and that in it. And this many people have seen my reports and everything. That that is really what people are looking for. And I feel like for me, it took me until I got my job to be able to understand how to articulate that.
mm,
Um, but I think that people who are still job searching can articulate that. I just hadn't found before I got my job. I hadn't really found any of these, like Megan and Jess are great, but
mhm,
I found them right around the same time I got my job. I think Ian got his job a little bit before me, but I definitely didn't find him until like at least a month after I got my job. And like, there's great creators in this space, but I didn't find really any of them before I got my job. And so it was just kind of me poking around, figuring things out. Like, what are they looking for on a resume? Do they want to see that I'm an expert at SQL? Like, is critical thinking skills important? Like, I don't know. Um, so now that you're coming around, like you've had some experience, what are you changing about your interview process, the way that you represent yourself as a candidate, your resume, your portfolio? Now that you've got the experience, what changes are you making?
yeah, good question. So, I mean, it was exciting to update my resume with some like real world experience in analytics. I would say that this time around, the job hunt is even more challenging because like my standard is a little higher. Like I don't want just like a straight entry level job. Even my role now, like to be perfectly honest, is like probably like a half step to a quarter step above entry level because they
Hmm.
were looking for someone who can kind of like get up and running with certain things and
Yeah.
and who had the domain experience. So I'm kind of like a leader in the department, so to speak, but
Hmm.
I'm an individual contributor. Um, but now it's like, I want a pay increase when I transition jobs, and so that kind of like because I'm already making more than I was, like it already cuts out a lot of jobs. Like, oh, this looks like
Right.
a cool role, but like that's like less than what I'm making now, or it's exactly what I'm making now, and I'd like to
Hmm.
jump up. But even in the interviews I've done, it's similar in that like there even in some of the roles I've interviewed for where like it's a lot more technical, whatever, they're still not looking for like experts, because I'm not like trying to be like a senior data analyst or anything. I'm looking for some kind of like middle ground between entry level and senior. Those are definitely out there.
Hmm.
Um, but it's kind of like my options are just more narrowed. Before I was casting a wider net because I was like, I want to break into the space. I've never like actually done this before professionally. Most jobs that I'm going to take are probably going to pay more than what I'm making now. And now it's just like a little bit more narrow because of all those things. But like there's some roles I've even interviewed for where like I'd be using Python. I'm just
Mm.
like, well, like I have like introductory knowledge of Python,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of like enough for them. Or they'll like I had this one cool interview where they asked a couple Python questions, and I was like, I don't know the answer, and they said, well, Google it, like look it up. Like we're not going to judge you. We Google stuff all the time, and I Googled it right there in the interview, and they're like, okay, what does it say? And I told them what it said, and he's like, now explain to me like what that means to you. And I put it in Excel terms. I'm like, oh, well, it sounds like this function in Excel, or it sounds like this function in SQL. And she's like, there you go. Like you understand what it is. You just haven't done it in Python. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of cool because they're like, okay, like he knows what Python is. He's not a Python wizard, but he knows these other tools and he knows how to find the answer, which is a big thing in analytics too. Because even now, like in the job, and I hear just about everyone say this. I think Jess Ramos just posted about that like today, actually, is that you Google stuff on the job all the time.
Yeah, she did.
I've
Yeah.
done a few like technical interviews in the last couple months, and I would hear that from the interviewer every time, like, hey, even I Google stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Cool in an interview where they kind of give you the space to like, okay, Google, like it's fine, you don't know the answer, like Google it, up with the solution and explain it to me. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that should take a little bit of pressure off people to not feel like they need to be experts. Finding solutions for yourself and being independent in that way, and again, being a critical thinker, like we mentioned, is so important in this role.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you've been doing it for a while, it's just there's so many things you're going to run into that you don't know, or you forget things. Like you may know all these things, but like, oh, I can't remember the exact syntax for this formula. Like I need to look it up. And
Yeah.
so people should feel comfortable in that way. Like as long as you have a decent knowledge of the tools, or you know some tools better than others, and you can lean on those tools a little bit more, and you've explored other tools, that
Mm-hmm.
still, I think, propels you, pretty far.
Yeah, like translating your Excel knowledge into what you were hearing from what the Python thing was asking you to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also like I came right out of graduate school. Like I was just finishing graduate school when I started doing my interviews, and in graduate school, I had to take my tests on a software that monitored because they were online because of COVID, that like monitored me and would watch my eyes. And if I would like look away from the camera for too long just to stretch or whatever, it would like a warning would pop up and it would say like a screenshot was just sent to your instructor or whatever.
Wow.
So coming out of that and then coming into technical interviews, which I did several, where you're allowed to bring in a cheat sheet, they're totally okay with you using Google. Was like at first I was like, am I cheating bringing this into the interview? Like I'm not really sure, but then I just asked the recruiters about it, and they're like, yeah, like it's you need to be able to Google when you get to your job. So you can use Google now, you can use a cheat
Mhm.
sheet. You don't have to remember where the semicolon goes. You don't have to remember the exact order of, does this go before or after the where? You can bring that in with you. It's your like ability to think and to apply it. I had one SQL interview where it was intentionally really difficult, and
Mm.
it like captured as you typed what you were typing, and like if you deleted it and stuff. So they kind of got to see a live playback of what you typed. And so I was able to Google like how the heck am I going to do this? And then the answer that I found, I kind of put it in there and tried to like work through it. And there was like 5 questions. It was like a half hour long. I was
Wow.
sweating, like I was stressed out. Like you would run the query and then it would bring you back the what it found if it could even be run. I'm not even sure I ever managed to get any data to come back, let alone the data that I was looking for. So I was like, wow, I bombed that one. But they moved me to the next stage, and I asked the person who was interviewing me about it, and they were like, oh, I mean, I didn't watch it personally, but when I got hired here, I didn't know all the answers to the questions, but they just want to see that you can like think through problems.
Mm.
They're expecting you to Google it, and they're expecting you to try and work through it, and that's what they're looking for. I made it to the
Yeah.
next round of the interview, so.
I think that's a really good sign too, when, the interview is kind of flexible in that aspect. Like
Mhm.
I had a technical interview. It was like a couple months ago. So I actually kind of have been looking for like passively for like a little while now.
Like, since you got
Um,
your job.
yeah, I've been doing it like more aggressively, just like super recently. But yeah,
Mhm.
there was one place I did 3 interviews, and they were like pretty much like they were like, "We're gonna hire you." I was super stoked about it. But then it's a small company, and they just like had all these. We just had like a high level meeting, and like all of our hiring needs are different now. Like, so
Yeah.
we're not even hiring at this time anymore. That was kind of a bummer. But when we did the technical interview, it was same thing. It was like I was even screen sharing, so they were seeing everything I was doing, and it was pretty basic stuff. But there's some things I had to Google, and again, he was like, "Yeah, like it's totally fine if you need to Google." And there's even ones where like I didn't get it totally right because like I had the comma in the wrong spot. He's like, don't worry about it. Like you had it. Like you understand. I want to see that you understand it, and
Mhm.
I did, and that was like good enough for them. So
Yeah.
I think that's always a good sign in technical interviews when they're really understanding of how it connects to like when you're doing it in real time, real life.
Yeah. I think that points to company culture too. Like my a big thing about my job, like, so we just had our company meeting. They I'm in Austin, Texas right now because they flew us to Austin, Texas. They got us rooms Monday and Tuesday night. We had our company party and it was great. And I just was reminded about, like, I got to meet a lot of my coworkers in person and everyone is just like so genuine, and they're just so ready to help. And especially as I was coming on new to the company and I was trying to figure out our product, if I ever ran into an issue or I was having a problem with it, um, someone would be happy to just get on a huddle with me and talk me through it in a non-condescending way, just like very like, yeah, this is it. Like, if you have any questions, let me know. And that really the same energy carried through to the in-person meeting. And I was like, man, like the fact that I get to make my own schedule, I get to work remotely, and I get to work with all these people, and I'm perfectly happy with my salary. It would take a lot for me to leave my company because I kind of like checked all the boxes. Like I really cannot understate how important company culture is. You were saying your company culture is kind of a little bit old school. Mine's not. Like I got like, yeah, I'm probably one of the younger people in my company, but we definitely have, I'd say, like a millennial culture. Like we're not into the Gen Z culture. Um, there's some Gen X people, but I'd say it's like a very millennial culture at my company. Yours sounds like kind of more of a boomer culture.
I work with pretty much all boomers. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Like some
bigger
of the
company
people
vibes.
who are like at the more entry level jobs, not as analysts, but like that like there's younger people, but a lot of the people I interact with, yeah, are much older than me, and I like not trying to be ageist or anything, but it's like kind of just shows that it's like it's a really old school like approach. Like just because someone's older doesn't mean they're going to have an old school approach, but this
Mhm.
company is a kind of stereotypical in that way,
Mhm.
you know. Um, yeah, so like the culture is not the best, like in those regards.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, what are your thoughts on ending up at like a startup? Because so I'll tell you first my experience with a startup. Like what I've heard about big companies is that they kind of have an existing hierarchy. They've got a structure, they've got a way that they do things. Whereas startups, you get to really, and I heard this when I was interviewing, and I really feel it now. Like you get to really help define the culture. Like a lot of the decisions that I'm making and the opinions that I have is being kind of molded into the fabric of the way that the company
hmm,
works. Um, and I
yeah,
think that's really cool, but it also requires me to be very dynamic. I'm never going to be running the same thing. Like I'm not going to run the report more than 1 week in a row. And um, yeah, it requires you to really think on your toes and be very dynamic. So, do you have a preference? Would you prefer to go towards like smaller startup, mid-sized, bigger? There's pros and cons to each of them.
yeah. And I'm not like I don't think I'm 100% focused on either one. For a minute, I was like just looking for startups, and the company I almost got hired at like was a startup.
Hmm.
I think with the layoffs, like to be honest, I've been
Hmm.
a little nervous about startups. Like I
Hmm.
just recently had an interview with like a much bigger company, but the culture was like really great, which is what had me really like excited about like the role. Um, so like I'm open to either. Like to me, it just like does come down to that culture. And with the job I have now, like I kind of knew what I was getting into. And I wouldn't say the culture is bad. It's just old school. Actually, the
Yeah.
company I came from had a super toxic work culture that was disguised as being really great. Like,
Mm.
there's all these company events and free lunches and these different things, but it was such a toxic culture. Like, the rigidity I'm talking about now, but also with this weird social hierarchy. And the
Mhm.
company I'm with now doesn't do a lot of those like really fun things or whatever, but it's everything's a lot more like equal, or like just
Yeah.
kind of baseline. Like I actually appreciate that about
Mhm.
it. Like, okay, yeah, all these bells and whistles look great, but like what's beneath the surface? And I
Mhm.
think ultimately culture comes down to things like trust and flexibility and why are we doing what we're doing? Um,
Yeah.
and some of like there's some of that where I'm at now. There's some of it it's not. The inflexibility is the biggest thing. But again, like I come from a toxic culture. But to answer your question, like I'm kind of open to it. I've never worked at a startup, and I've always wanted to. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous about all the people getting laid off. But it's that happens at big companies. It happens at small companies. Like I think Amazon just announced they're letting go of 18,000 people. Like
Yeah.
so, big companies aren't immune either. So I really do feel that wherever you go, you have the same risk. So I'm kind of open to anything.
Yeah. I actually th I have been looking out, obviously we're all looking out for our jobs, and I'm finding that it's the big companies that did a lot of hiring because they got a lot of funding and they said, "Okay, let's try out this, let's try out this, let's try out this," that are now letting go of employees. Whereas like my startup is doing great. I mean, we're at a pause in hiring. We don't need to hire anybody new because we're doing great. Um, but I know that we're going to be hiring again this spring because a lot of startups did not have that extra budget to just like go crazy and hire people they didn't need.
Yeah.
And so obviously with a recession, everyone's going to feel it. But I actually think this is just my personal opinion. This is not financial advice to anybody watching. A little disclaimer there, but I think I've seen the most stability at startups
Hmm.
um, because they haven't had that over hiring, and so really everyone that works for them, they need to have working for them because they don't have that extra budget. So,
Yeah. That makes sense. And I think what interests me about startups is like you're involved in a lot more. And the culture at startups does tend to be a lot more relaxed and trusting,
mhm,
at least what I've seen. And even the ones I've interviewed at, like the culture seemed great, like at some of these places. Um, so yeah, I mean, I would personally love to work at a startup. Never have, but would love to do it.
yeah. I think some of the reasons that people go for big companies is they can, they wanna get to those the career progression, that specific job title at the big company or whatever, get that access, which is at a startup I feel like titles are so flexible. Like a lot of times people I've talked to said that like at a startup titles are kind of like made up. Like
Yeah.
I feel like my role, like we're technically like I'm on like the visualization. So we like I was on the Tableau team. I think we're kind of calling it the visualization team. I'm a consultant, but I work full time for my company. So like consultant is misleading because usually consultants like don't work for their company.
Yeah.
Um, so like I'm a data analyst definitely. So like that's what I put in my headline on LinkedIn because that's what kind of the term is. But like
Mhm.
business intelligence, yeah, I definitely do that. And data analyst, definitely do that. Tableau consultant, definitely do that. And so I noticed that each person in my role, we all kind of have like a slightly different headline. We all call ourselves like something slightly different. Whereas like a mid-level manager at Google, whatever they're doing, like they've got that defined and like that's what you're going to see on their profile. Like this is exactly what I do and I need you to know that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. For me though, even though I'm at a big company, I think the title is misleading. Again, like I'm the first like analyst hire for the department, so I don't think they totally knew like
Hmm.
what the all the day to days of the role are, but it's definitely more like business analyst, data analyst type stuff. Because I think even like Megan Liu, like she used to be a financial analyst, but like actual financial analyst. And when I've heard her talk about what she did,
Mhm.
completely different than what I'm
Hmm.
doing. Like when you really look at the day to day of what I'm doing, it's data analyst work. It's like business
Yeah.
analyst. It's analytics. Uh,
Mhm.
but that's why, like, like I've said before, like in posts, like titles can be misleading in data because there's so many different names for it, and they can mean so many different things to different companies. So you just kind of have to like know what you're getting into. And sometimes there's data analyst roles that are straight up like data scientist roles.
Yeah.
Even straight up data analyst titles can be misleading, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know we're at 8, but that was what you said made me wonder about this one last question. Was it difficult getting hired for a role that you said you were the first person that kind of did your role at your company. So was it challenging to come in and have to kind of define that? Like, okay, this is what my role is?
Yeah, there's some pressure there. They were flexible in terms of like, we know it's going to kind of take some time to figure out like all the things you're doing. Like we're kind of like building the plane as we fly it with this role. But there was pressure of like, okay, I'm kind of like defining what it is for them, uh, in a sense, or like what we're doing or building out processes. But that's part of what really excited me. Like I have the opportunity to build all this new reporting, to build these new processes. That was another reason why I took it. It's such a unique opportunity. First analytics hire for the department. I have the opportunity to build out things. So even though I felt a lot of pressure coming in, again, that was part of my strategy. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm building stuff here that like is hopefully going to outlive me. They're feeling out what all this looks like with me, and that's just a cool opportunity. So
Mm-hmm.
I've really kind of leaned into that or embraced that, and that was part of what I liked about the role coming into it. And it
That's
has
good.
been, cool. Yeah,
Yeah, if I like, I know that sometimes it's not uncommon to see, I see that businesses will post like, hey, this is what we want, and you would be the first one. So hopefully somebody who's looking at a position like that sees this and gets to benefit from that advice. Because I know I saw that in my job search and I was like, I don't know, do I have what it takes to cut it? Like, am I going to get hired and they're going to fire me in 3 months because I don't know what I'm doing? Did you ever feel like that? Did you ever get worried that that would happen?
no, I think like kind of like I mentioned, like and again, this is not because I'm great or anything, but I think I made like a good impression coming in, and
Mm-hmm.
they really like me. Like I think if I were to leave, they'd be pretty sad. So I've never felt like my job is in danger, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. Like it's good to not feel like your job is in danger, you know. So I think I've like I feel good about where I'm at there. Yeah,
Yeah.
but coming in, like you don't know what to expect. Like there's that pressure. But once things started going pretty well, I felt good about like my place in the company.
Yeah. Well, it is 8:02 my time. I think it's 7:02 your time, right?
Yeah,
No, it's
or
not 8:02 my time. I'm so confused 'cause I'm in Austin, but my computer has not switched over. My phone has switched over, and my watch took like a day to switch over. So I have no clue what time it is. I just have no
yeah,
clue what time it
yeah.
is.
And for anyone
But
listening, I'm Mountain Standard Time, so I'm
yeah,
like different time zone from Annie.
yeah. But thanks so much for coming on. I hope that if you have been following Matt for a while and you're here, you've enjoyed getting to see your real face and your real self.
Yeah.
And I love seeing there was some like really cool stuff going on in the chat. I think you can't see the chat, right? There was like people giving straight up career advice in the chat. So that was really cool. Like it was just
Yeah.
like a sidebar to what we were doing. Yeah,
Great.
yeah. So
Yeah, it was awesome talking. Thanks again for having me on. Super cool getting to talk to you. I really enjoyed the time.
yeah, this has been great. Thanks guys for coming and I'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Hang on. It's ending right now.